Hello and welcome back to the Father and Son Pastime Podcast. We're rolling today, Dad, from the AL East right to the AL Central. Let's talk a little offseason outlooks. Sound good?
Yeah, baby.
Now, we are in the Central, Dad, and it was a weak-ass division. I say weak-ass division this year.
That's a hyphenated compound modifier.
AL and NL, to be honest. But the AL is the weakest. Disappointments in the White Sox. Yeah, some in the Twins. They were first place for a lot of the season. And surprise, surprise, of the Cleveland new name Guardians. Let's talk about them first, Dad. Cleveland.
You know what? It's funny that a lot of teams, a lot of people who are fans of baseball, were rooting for them because they were such underdogs and everything else. I don't know if you watched this, but in the offseason so far, as far as Gold Glove winners, they have done quite well because they had a great defensive team. Two of their outfielders were Gold Glove winners. Mm-hmm. So, again, Cleveland, it was pitching, defense, timely hitting. They have a young squad that are coming up. They got some really good players that are sub-28 on their squad.
Young.
In the offseason, they really need to concentrate on getting some offense. They probably need a new catcher. They could probably use some middle infielders. But pitching-wise, they have some young pitching that is good. They have a good farm system. The future is bright in Cleveland. And in that division, I think they're ready to make it consistently a couple division winners. But again, this offseason is very, very important to them to add offense to that lineup.
Yes, and I think they'll be after one designated hitter in particular, because that's the only flaw I see. Dad, you mentioned middle infielders. Andres Jimenez was the second best second baseman. I know that's fun.
And an all-star.
In the AL, only second to Jose Altuve. And Rosario's decent at shortstop. Again, I don't think they've been the baddest, since Omar Vizquel in the shortstop range. But you mentioned catcher could be a weak spot. Josh Naylor's little brother, Bo, is set to be their starting catcher next season. So Bo Naylor and Josh Naylor, catcher and first base combo, unless they move Naylor to the outfield or move to the DH. But that could definitely be a situation there. They could trade. There is a surplus at starting pitching. Aaron Savali, or Savali, because he had the one outing in the postseason and he had a bad outing. Hey, you had to pitch somebody there. Everyone else was kind of tired. They all rose to the occasion. Miles Straw, never hitting a home run. Miles, 5 of their starters stole 20 bases or more. Oscar Gonzalez, are you ready, kids? He's going to be a stud of studs.
Big home run in the playoffs.
Yeah, and anyone that just walks up to the plate with SpongeBob, it's really funny. He's the new baby shark. He's the new Gerardo Pera. They still have Bieber, obviously. Yeah. They had a Rookie of the Year candidate with Stephen Kwan. McKenzie and Quantrill are solid 2-3 guys. Plesac, Savalik, again, could get traded. Emmanuel Clase, full class in the closer role. Yeah. Karen Check, Eli Morgan, some really good names in the bullpen as well. Didn't lose much, Dad. Brian Shaw, older guy of the relievers, and Austin Hedges, that'll probably be immediately supplanted by Bo Naylor.
Yeah. Maybe, bring him along slowly and get a veteran catcher there to, provide some offense. One person comes to mind, it could be a good fit. They're going to try to trade for a catcher at the deadline. That didn't happen. That team wanted too much for that catcher, but at the same time, that might be a good fit. And then also that catcher could be a little DH as well. So that person would be a great addition, but I see Cleveland winning the division again this year.
Bo Naylor, 21 home runs, 68 RBIs, batted .263 as a catcher in Dublin's AAA last year.
Okay. That's a good young catcher that, maybe get somebody that can catch and also go DH a little bit.
Came up end of the season, 5 games, do a little cup of coffee. Not much to note there. Yeah. But yeah, so I really think the Naylor brothers could be fun to watch. Little dual bobblehead maybe, Cleveland's. I like them to, I don't know about straight up repeat, but they finished 92-70. Something tells me that there'll be a little less losses and a little more losses and a little less wins in that, because I think the Twins want to compete. I have to argue that the White Sox want to compete. even though it doesn't really look like it right now. And they don't want to get embarrassed again. So I think there'll be a little bit more hunger from Minnesota and Chicago that could threaten Cleveland. But just like the Blue Jays in the East Ad, the Guardians are the most ready for 2023 and need to do the least amount of additions.
Yeah, and they're counting on their young guys getting better. And, you take a lot, those stars in their lineup are sub 25.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the good thing. And again, speed and defense, a lot of gold glove on that. So, that's rarity in baseball now, is to have a running game. So I think Cleveland is poised, and I think they have a nice little fan base going there. I think it's exciting to have somebody new in the playoffs. So I'm a big Cleveland fan.
2016, remember, he's a Cubs fan. All right, remember, he's
Yeah.
a Cubs fan. Don't let him try to buy your hearts. Dad, let's talk about the Twins.
Sure.
Twins, they got a lot of question marks. Let's start with all their losses. Carlos Correa, leading off.
Huge.
We all knew he was going to opt out of his contract. Wants a long-term thing. Did like Minnesota for what it's worth. They are a possibility to re-sign him. The Gary Sanchez, Gio Urshela trade, now both those players are gone. Gary with the free agency. They traded Gio. They lost Michael Fulmer, their big rookie sensation of a couple years ago. Miguel Sano, that never just stayed healthy. He's gone. Chris Archer and Dylan Bundy are also gone, as well as some bullpen and some bench pieces. So they lost a lot. They're going to have a lot of internal conversations because there's two directions the Twins can go. The Twins can ball out and go get Carlos Correa again, or another shortstop for that matter, but I think it's only going to be Carlos if anybody. They have a hole at first base. No, nobody's there. I mean, Luis Ariz could be first or second base, so pick where he's playing, and there's your hole. And they don't have a catcher, like openly no catcher whatsoever. They got rid of Mitch Garver when they got Gary, so they don't really have anybody. One of the trades they made last year, Dad, was to get Chris Paddock, and now he's back on Tommy John for the second time, so he's out all year. Kenta Maeda, mid-season return, I believe. He's coming back from a Tommy John. They got Tyler Mahle from the Reds. He's okay. Joe Ryan, Sonny Gray. They're decent. There's lack of an ace, in my opinion, on that squad.
Yeah.
Pitching's always been an issue.
A lot of three starters.
In Minnesota. So if they go Correa, they'll probably just add on to those missing pieces of catching and first base and put their money in offense. If they don't get Correa, I can see them putting money into pitching. So that's the kind of two ways I see, and let almost kids, the youth, take the spots that are the holes. Dad, there have been a lot of promising prospects. For example, Byron Buxton. I mean, if he gets a full year, he's an MVP candidate, but he can't stay healthy. Royce Lewis is coming back from he won't start the year probably, maybe like May-ish, June of his return from an injury. Royce Lewis could play shortstop. There's been thoughts of him possibly in the outfield. If you remember Alex Kirilloff, he's a left field sensation that also has never gotten his career off track. Nick Gordon, Jose Miranda, Gilbert Celestino all could kind of play some of those open holes in their left or even first.
A lot of woulda, shoulda, couldas.
A lot of woulda, shoulda, couldas. So there are just these options on hey, we got now Kyle Farmer. He could play shortstop. He could play second base if we asked him to. He could play third base with that new trade. They got Jorge Lopez from the Orioles last year. Their bullpen's okay, but it could certainly, pad it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Again, I like the Twins. For years, I always thought they could be a World Series contender. They just need a lot of pieces, and I don't know how much money they are going to put into this 2023 team.
Well, if they go Correa, that's going on 35 to 40, and if they don't, they got 35 to 40 to put in other places. So
same conversation to Judge then, but more money.
Correct. I'm with you 100%. They had a disappointing year. They started out poorly and
they started out first place.
And then they fell in June, July and never recovered.
But they started off great.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was injuries that made them go to a big downfall or just it was lack of pitching or a combination.
Pitching. Mostly pitching.
Yeah. When you went down who they're losing, it's a lot of guys who are the back end of a rotation.
Yeah, Archer, Bundy.
Yeah.
But they're kind of past their prime.
Yep.
They're not even the top 50 free agents.
Yeah.
Twins, excited to see what you do. A mirror version of the Yankees with a smaller payroll. Correa's figure that out, figure the Judge situation out, and then your whole offseason can happen. Chicago, Dad?
Probably one of the most disappointing teams in the majors last year. High hopes for the White Sox entering the season. They never, ever got any momentum going. In fact, they finished, a little strong to make a push to maybe be that last team get into the playoffs. But along the way, they just never got hot. And I think is a combination of a whole bunch of things. But I think pitching and defense kind of let them down a little bit. They were always trying to fill holes. Their center fielder got hurt. They had a couple good, years out of, Abreu and a couple other folks, but just the guys they really wanted to depend on didn't have great years, and they just never got any momentum. Finished 11 games behind the Indians, which many people never thought that was going to happen this year. And then with the people they're going to lose, I don't know the future of the White Sox. I think they're in a state of flux as well. What are they going to do? Are they going to try to recapture some of that momentum and try to challenge Cleveland? I think this year is a big year for the White Sox to go, I'm all in, or do I go rebuild and trade some guys? Abreu's a key. If he goes elsewhere, that's a huge hole to fill for the White Sox. Big year for their offseason. But last year, of all the teams in baseball, that was probably in the top 3 of the disappointing teams.
It was. A lot of money to go 500, 81 and 81. Their Hall of Fame manager is out. They did not get a big name, which to me is almost kind of the tone for how their offseason will go. They're not going to go after really any big names. Pedro Grifol is the new manager. Exactly. Don't even know if I'm saying it right. I think they're out on Jose Abreu. They had like a very similar like Nick Markakis leaving Baltimore. Like they had like a little farewell for him. Andrew Vaughn seems to be the in-house replacement at first. They lost Josh Harrison at second. That's a hole. Elvis Andrus was a midseason addition, just like Johnny Cueto. Both of them are gone. And AJ Pollock is also off the team. Yasmani Grandal had such a disappointing year. Yohan Moncada, I think, had the first negative year of his life. Robert and Jimenez have not been fully healthy ever, right?
Those two, Jimenez has just never been healthy for an entire year, and they were counting on big with their center fielder, and he got hurt mid-season and didn't really recover.
Very similar to Buxton. These are phenomenally talented, top 50 players, yet they can't stay healthy. The bullpen we talked about, we lauded about as we went into this year, the best bullpen in baseball, and it wasn't. Pretty much everyone got hit. Obviously, they traded Craig Kimbrell to start the year, but they still had Kopech and Kelly and Graveman and Liam Hendricks, and it just wasn't the...
They spent some money.
...dominant bullpen that they thought they would. They had a Dylan Cease, a Cy Young, former Cub, Cy Young, second place, third place in the AL. Lucas Giolito and Lance Lynn. That's a pretty dominant 3.
Yeah.
In the AL Central, no 3 are better. Sure, Shane Bieber might be better than one of those guys, but not all 3.
Yeah.
Certainly the 1, 2, 3 of any of those teams. And it's just tough to see what was their run differential?
Run differential.
Ooh, they got hit. They gave up negative 31 run differential.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Pitching and defense just didn't come through.
So I don't. They do have a lot of.
Except for Cease. Cease had a great year.
Yeah, they do have some money locked up. They're figuring out like their whole managerial staff. I could see a reunion with Cueto, but I think they need some power hitters either at first or second, if that's possible. If it's not first, the DH. Vaughn could DH. Vaughn could play first. They could swap out and platoon. I think they will want to contend, but they're kind of a mess right now.
Yeah, I agree. And, in Chicago, I think the Cubs are now on the upward swing, and the White Sox are kind of like stuck in neutral. So for a while, the White Sox were, moving up, and the Cubs were going down. And now you see that kind of going the opposite way. The Cubs have some momentum in that town of big media. So the White Sox need to battle that I think will be a big year for the Cubs. So they may lose the offseason to the Cubs as well.
Talk about being stuck in neutral. The Detroit Tigers. Thank you for that transition. After signing Javier Baez, getting A.J. Hinch, Eduardo Rodriguez, Erod, a lot of baseball fans and experts thought the Tigers could be in contention. Some people put them as like a wildcard team next to the White Sox last year.
Yeah, just because of the additions.
I do not remember a team with as worse of an offense as Detroit in 2022.
Struck out a lot.
They didn't hit a home run until like May. I think that might be an exaggeration, but could also be true. Like they just didn't hit the ball at all.
Yeah.
Javi Baez has the worst year of his career. None of their rookies, turned out okay. Casey Mize, I think, is out all of 2023. Erod was okay. Turnbull and Skubal were just okay, but they don't really have a lot of talent. Miguel Cabrera has considered retirement a year early. Is a year left on his contract. He'll be their DH if he's healthy, but there have been rumors about retirement. Talk about deflating a team.
Yeah.
Tucker Barnhart, their catcher, had a terrible year after that trade, but he's out. Lost a ton of relievers from Daniel Norris, Andrew Chafin, Drew Hutchinson, and then they released 2 starters towards the end of like August, September. One starter, one reliever. Michael Pineda got outright released, and a good reliever, Willie Peralta, got outright released. Their penciled-in closer is Gregory Soto. He only had 11 saves last year. Would be the lowest returning closer in baseball if he does return. Alex Lang, he is the league leader of wild thing. He has 15 wild pitches. He didn't even play the whole year, and he led the league in 15 wild pitches. There just needs to be a lot of help in Detroit, and they've been linked somehow to more big shortstops. Carlos Correa also has been linked to this with Hinch, and they'll be thinking about moving Baez to second and trading Scope.
Not a market.
To interdivision White Sox, actually, because they do need a second baseman. So there's just like, I look at the holes and I see Heimer Candelario got non-tendered, no third baseman, no depth 4 or 5. Their 1-2-3 is not a good 1-2-3, and 0 bullpen really outside Gregory Soto. I don't look at them as contending teams. If they signed anyone, it would be to a long-term contract, kind of like Baez, and hopes the team gets good under their long-term contract. Once Miguel Cabrera's numbers are off the board, so if he does retire, which again, I don't think he will, but if he does, there's a whole bunch of money that just gets opened up in Detroit. Could this be the year Detroit does get a big piece because, hey, we don't really have much on the payroll after 2024? Could certainly be an option, and hopefully it clicks for the rookies.
Here's a stat for you. They scored the fewest runs in baseball last year.
That adds up.
Yeah.
Significantly. Is anyone even in the 500s besides them?
Oakland. But, I mean, think about it.
It's tough.
But it's still.
They finished 4th, too. That's a shot to Kansas City. Scored 100 more runs, but lost.
Well, they gave up 108.
Yeah, no pitching.
But, I mean, if you think about that, with their high-powered offense, scoring only 557, that says a whole bunch.
They don't have a high-powered offense.
Well, on paper.
They could have. It was really just Baez, and he hasn't had one good year.
Well, you had Cabrera, you had Scope that didn't have a bad year, so they were trying to piece it together, and they put a lot of eggs in, Javi's basket, and he just didn't come through. In fact, apparently he's on the market for pennies on the dollar. They're trying to trade him.
Well, that would go the opposite direction of the Carlos Correa rumors. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I did the thumbs down because, Baez booed the Mets fans last year in 2021. Never forget.
Yeah.
Dad, let's move to Kansas City. Kansas City had the least really amount of losses in that division and really all of baseball. They just lost Zach Greinke. if he wants to retire, he wants to return. But everyone else, I mean, they traded a lot. They traded Benintendi mid-year. They traded Carlos Santana. But in terms of offseason losses, it's just Zach Greinke.
And they changed GMs.
Yes, and he was there for like 20-some years.
Yes.
Yeah, very religious guy, I've heard.
So that may open up some possibilities for Kansas City going forward, maybe a new breath. But I still think they're not going to be big spenders. I think they're, again, trying to rely on the young people coming up. But Kansas City was, they were talking about being 500, moving up the rankings of the Central Division. Detroit and them just bottomed out.
Air out.
Yeah, and just didn't happen. And I don't think they were good in any phase of the game.
They finally got rid of Whit Merrifield. Bobby Witt had a good rookie year, but he was not even in a real contending spot for any Rookie of the Year votes. It was obviously Julio just ran away with it.
Yeah. Adley
Rutschman and Pena for the Astros. So he wasn't even the best rookie shortstop. So that's tough too. He's still great. Drew Waiters, the guy they got from Atlanta, could be a big right fielder, outfielder for them. If Isbell gets it together, if Pasquantino, their Italian first baseman, if they figure out what they're doing with Sal Perez and MJ Melendez, there's a bunch of power there. It's Vinny Pasquantino. He's a big boy. It probably says it a lot deeper than that. He's not some pipsqueak. Nicky Lopez is still pretty good, but they don't have any good pitching. Their bullpen's weak. Their starters are all 4 or 5 guys, in my opinion. As you can tell, we told you we were going to start getting silly. I love Vinny Pasquantino. Follow him on Twitter. He's only got like 10,000 followers for being an MLB player. So
is it Vincente, his God-given name?
No, Pasquantino.
Okay.
Vinny.
Well, Vincente.
I don't know if it's Vincente.
Okay.
I think it's just, I don't know. But I just like Pasquantino.
Okay.
Cool name. The Royals always have these long names. Their seamstress really has a lot of work to stitch. They do. Didn't they have Grusolanic at one point in their career?
Well, a lot of teams did.
I know.
For all the Cubbies.
I know, but that's a long ass name.
Yeah. Well, we'll think of Crow Armstrong on the back of his Cubs.
Just write PCA. Yeah.
They might.
They won't do that. So the Royals, I don't know. I mean, the R for Royals stands for rebuild, and they're just going to keep rebuilding.
You're pretty hot today, by the way.
I'm killing it. I don't have them linked to any big free agents. I'm trying to see if any of the top 50. Nada. I don't have Kansas City getting any big name of any of the top 50.
I think they are in neutral as well. I think the payroll, again, is a big thing. Will they make little moves along the way, the non-tenders and all that? The answer is yes, but I don't think they have the resources to move up the ladder. They need more time with a new GM and a new philosophy. They're definitely in the rebuild. So again, they're going to be bottom dwellers again. I can't see Detroit doing that much improvement. They're stuck with some huge contracts, so I think both of those won't have great years.
I looked up Vinny Pasquantino, and it's Vincent.
Okay.
Vincent Joseph, but guess what his nickname is? He has 2 so far. He has the Italian Nightmare, but my more favorite one is the Italian Breakfast. I'm not kidding. That's what it says right there on Baseball Reference. Okay. I love this guy. I might have to get a card of him.
Hey,
if there's a bobblehead of him eating breakfast, I'm getting it.
Yeah, that'd be great. You want the ODU?
Yeah, he's from Richmond, I think, or from Virginia.
That's great.
So he didn't grow up. He didn't get any, a Tony. He didn't get any of the accents from New York.
He is a big guy.
He's a big boy.
Yeah.
I hope he has a fantastic year. He's got a lot of power. He reminds me a lot of Hunter Morris, if you guys remember that name, Milwaukee, where Big Promise did really well in the minors. I just don't know how he'll translate to major league pitching.
I would love to find out the story how he got the Italian breakfast as a nickname.
He probably just had some sausages or something, at like 8 a.m. before like a 12 o'clock game. He's like, Vinny, what are you doing eating this breakfast?
Stromboli and eggs?
Yes. You can't eat this seafood Alfredo before we go on.
And they talk like that in Kansas City.
Kansas City has a mob. Kansas City legitimately has a mafia.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories of the Kansas City mob.
Huh.
Yeah, they would control things in Missouri and whatnot.
Interesting.
Yeah. We're going down the mafia route. We're talking about baseball. There's the Kansas City mob, though. And yeah, I think it actually was the last team of the AL Central. So I would go, Dad. I'm still going to go Guardians in first.
Yeah.
I will hopefully go Twins, then White Sox, Tigers, Royals. But I really don't know the 2 or 3. And I really just see the Guardians making the playoffs again.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the offseason. Will the White Sox spend some money? Again, they're in a state of flux as well. Rick Hahn, if he doesn't do improvements, he's out as GM. New manager. I don't think La Russa was a guiding force with the White Sox.
No, he was asleep in the dugout.
I think that the players did not respect him.
No, would you expect a guy that gets like 6 DUIs?
So I think that might have something to do with this. So the chemistry with the White Sox might be better next year. They do have a good ace. He's a young guy that's just going to get better. They just don't have enough. And then again, all depends what they get for their first base and their other positions they need to build. But yeah, their power hitter is going to be gone, so they got to replace all that too.
Well, we are cleaning up with the AL Central. Then we are heading to the AL West, which should be a longer and more fun conversation because there's more talent out west. You'll hear me say this term, Dad, a lot. The West is the best. On to the West.